We are now being joined by TOLU OJESHINA, a program manager, Citizens Security. Yeah, welcome on the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. So, Citizens Security. Fortunately, that's the conversation that we are having now. Where are we in terms of peace building in Nigeria with all the things that we have been seeing in recent times?
Okay, I think I would say that it depends on what context you are looking at it and which of the peace actors, so to speak, that you are trying to examine. So for instance, if you are looking at it from the interventions of the government, and if you are speaking to the government will tell you that they are moving in the right direction and taking the correct steps, but the perceptions that are being put forward by the people, it seems that they have a certain level of mistrust and a certain level of disbelief towards the efforts that the government is putting out. So, like I said, it depends on who you are talking to and how you are looking at the situation. In Nigeria, because we are so diverse, peace is relative in different contexts. If you are speaking to somebody from the southwest or south-south, which might be the most relatively peaceful place in the country at the moment, not saying that it's completely peaceful, but if you're comparing it to the southeast with the secessionist movements there and the northeast with the insurgency happening there, you would say that those regions are relatively peaceful. The northwest, of course, with all the banditry and all that's going on in those areas and kidnapping of children and all of that. So I would say where we are right now, it's pretty obvious that we have regressed quite a bit. But I think the responsibilities of the different actors, including the citizens, including civil society organizations, which I am a part of, including the media, and all of that, those roles and those responsibilities need to be clearly articulated so we can actually understand who is responsible for peace building in Nigeria, who needs to be doing what groups need to be included. Then we can then have a holistic view about whether or not Nigeria is actually a peaceful place. Yeah.
Well, you know, some will say that, well, security, peace is everybody's business. I mean, everybody in Nigeria, Nigerians generally must take responsibility and all of that. But we all know that someone has to take responsibility, like the bulk of the responsibility, you know, in what we're dealing with. How do you, or would you respond to recent calls by certain state actors, you know, for Nigerians to defend themselves, you know, in the face of aggression?
I think it's unfortunate because it's something that has come out of the situation that we found ourselves. Like I said, people do not trust the institutions. But like you mentioned, the onus and the responsibility is on the government to protect its people. That is the mandate that it has. So when people say that security is everybody's business, I agree to a certain extent, but also it makes it seem like as if you are passing the buck of the responsibility to people that cannot do much about it. People like you and I are privileged because we have information, we kind of understand the context, you can read the news and analyze things. But if you look at people that are living within contexts where they have no power, how does security become their business, so to speak? What can they really do that would affect any concrete change within their societies or within their communities? So security is everybody's business, but I wouldn't say that the reason why certain states, for instance, have decided to set up their own security apparatus is because the existing structures are not functioning as they should. And that is the problem that should be tackled. Rather than passing off the responsibility to the rest of us who are bloody civilians, it should, the institutions that should secure the people need to be strengthened. I think that's where the focus should be on. Yeah. So
now in building peace, there are certain things that, you know, some would say needs to be addressed, you know, aside the fact that, yes, we of course have the state take responsibility in terms of guaranteeing safety and all of that. But there are other elements that determine peace. Yeah. Take us through that and how well are we doing in making sure that those things are in place?
I think one thing that's very important for me is sustainable peace, right? So doing things that would ensure peace, but ensuring that that peace lasts long. That's the whole idea. And I think one very important conversation that needs to be had to ensure that is inclusion. You can't have conversations around peace, around conflict resolution, around peace building, and exclude certain demographics or exclude certain people within the country. Those kinds of conversations mean that you are only focusing on peace for a particular set of people and not for others. And I think that's one thing that's important. So it's inclusion. And I work with Partners West Africa and Nigeria, we're a civil society organization, and one of the things that we talk about is gender inclusion. You can't have conversations around sustainable peace without involving women. And a lot of the time, those kinds of conversations are had and women are excluded. Even at the basic level, at the community level, when there are conversations around, oh, okay, there's a problem within the community, how do we fix it? And all the people in the room are the men in the room. But we know that in Nigeria, at least 50% of the population is women. So these are some of the ingredients that must be put in place to ensure that this peace thing that we're trying to achieve is something that is sustainable and something that can be taken seriously. You can't talk about peace within the country and exclude persons living with disabilities, for instance. They are a major group. They are a group that are large in number and have grown because of various reasons, including conflict. So you have people within the Northeast that are now living with disabilities because they have been affected by the conflict, right? If you're having any conversations and you exclude them, you're excluding an important perspective. So one of the ingredients, like I said, is ensuring that there's inclusion. There's gender inclusion, inclusion of women. And it's not just a Nigerian problem. The United Nations that set up the International Day of Peace also understands the importance of inclusion of women. So there are different agendas and different security resolutions from the United Nations that look at promoting the participation of women in peace building, especially within conflict-affected regions like Nigeria.
So how do you see this, recent conflicts, impacts on, these demographics you just highlighted? People living with disability, women, children, and all of that. How do you see, the current situation in terms of security impacting on their lives?
I think I want to talk first about children. We know what has been happening in the Northwest. My organization, we convened a dialogue recently around school kidnappings, and in the last 2 to 3 years, over 1,000 students, almost every day you hear of a school being attacked in Zamfara and in Katsina. And it's unfortunate because a lot of these children are released, but then people are not understanding the traumatic effects it would have on them. So now you are traumatizing a generation, a future generation, and they are already exposed to things that really at that age you shouldn't be exposed to. Like I said, a lot of us are privileged. My upbringing was nothing like that. I went to school, I went back home, I went to university, I got a good job, and then, that's it. But then we have children within those areas that are being traumatized because of the security situation. And it's unfortunate because children cannot defend themselves. Since they say security is everybody's business, children can't defend themselves. All they want to do is to go to school and to learn. So the effects there are multiplier effects to it. You speak to certain communities in regions like Kaduna State, and you hear parents say things like, I'm not going to send my daughter to school because I'm afraid that if she goes, she will not come back. Same thing in Northeast because of what happened in Chibok and in Dapchi and all of that. So there are multiplier effects. First of all, it's reducing the level of education that we have in the country because people are afraid to go to school, and justifiably so. Because every other day now, children are being kidnapped, even students within tertiary institutions. So there's that effect. Then there's the effect it has on women. I always say that the conflict, for instance, that we have in the Northeast, the effects on women are disproportionate because apart from the fact that women are being killed and so are men, women are being kidnapped, forced into marriage, raped, having forced pregnancies and all of that. And then it's creating such a strenuous and tenuous environment in that region that women are not comfortable living there, that this conflict has so many impacts. You hear of stories of girls that were kidnapped and forced to marry and have gotten pregnant and were released, thank God, or have managed to escape. But now their communities do not accept them anymore because you are seen as the wife of Boko Haram. You understand? So that sort of person now, where does she find peace? Where does she find succor? Your community has rejected you. You are coming from a place where the insurgents or where terrorism has had such a great impact in your life. So the same goes for persons with disabilities. They do not have the same, they should have, but they do not have the same privileges and rights that other people have, right? You see that legislations are made and they are not considered, even simple things as access to certain places. So these groups that are vulnerable, these groups that are marginalized, it's important for them to be part of that conversation so you can get their perspective. That's it.
You know, very important to the conversation about peace building is the issue of reconciliation. We have an issue at hand at the moment where we have thousands of, members of Boko Haram or fighters surrender, and government is saying, well, we are granting, well, not amnesty per se, but we are accepting them and reintegrating them back into the society. And on the other hand, you have people who were victims of these same people are now having to live side by side with them and all of that. Not many Nigerians are disposed to the idea of reintegrating them back into the society. What would be your thoughts as far as that is concerned?
It's a tricky situation, but I think there has to be a way to balance both sides, and that's where the concept of transitional justice comes in. If you intend to provide some level of amnesty or some level of I've forgotten the word I'm looking for, but a way to be able to de-radicalize these people, you also have to ensure that the communities that they have impacted negatively are also given reparations, right? So you cannot get a group of former insurgents and de-radicalize them and then send them back to a community that was ravaged and has not been rebuilt. Send them back to a community that people lost their lives, people lost property, and there have been no forms of reparations given to them. There has to be a balance on both sides, and I think that's where the challenge is coming from. So there are certain people that are of the school of thought that amnesty is a form of reward for people that do bad things in Nigeria. I've had conversations with people where they say, look at how we started in the Niger Delta with the amnesty program. So you see young men that are disturbing the society, so to speak, and then they are given these opportunities. Meanwhile, the people that are there, that are living peacefully, are not given those opportunities. So people are looking at that balance that, okay, so do I need to be involved in some level of violence or some level of confusion, causing confusion within my community to be able to get the basic human needs or basic human rights from my country? So there has to be a balance. You cannot push for the radicalization and push for reintegration of Boko Haram, previous insurgents, without fixing the communities that they will be returning to. There has to be a level of reparations for those communities. Communities need to be rebuilt. People need to have their lives back. That is the only point at which the government can confidently say, okay, let's have this conversation. If not, it's continue to go around and around. There's the Operation Safe Corridor, right, that the military is running. So they will finish running the Operation Safe Corridor. These insurgents can't stay there forever. They have to go back to their communities, and it's very possible that the communities will reject them. So there has to be a way of, and apart from the formal reparations, but a way of trying to rebuild community resilience within those areas. So putting in structures and mechanisms that would allow people to heal from what they've experienced and then receive.
What are some of the expectations here when we see repentant Boko Haram fighters go back? We have heard stories like that. We have heard stories like, well, we are dialoguing with bandits, and then after dialogue, they would say, well, they have repented, and then they go back to it. How do we handle this kind of situation in terms of peace building?
I think we can't look at that situation in isolation. It has to be looked at within the broader sense of the challenges we have with governance in Nigeria. So we have a lot of challenges as regards to the economy, a lot of challenges as regards to good governance, and the fact that people do not trust the institutions that are supposed to be managing the country. So if you have repentant Boko Haram fighters or repentant bandits that have been de-radicalized and are going back to a society that really has no opportunities for them, I think it's evident to say that they would go back, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that we can't look at it as, oh, this is a problem in isolation. We've done our amnesty program for them and they are still going back. What do we do? It's because of the larger problem we have with governance in the country, the larger problems we have with unemployment in the country, the corruption that leads to people not being able to access basic human needs like healthcare and food and all of that. So it's not something that can be looked at alone, right? If not, we'll keep going around in circles. The reason why a lot of people, there are certain people that just have, how would I put it, despicable characters, and a life of crime and causing confusion is what is appealing to them. But there are certain others that get into these sort of things because of various reasons, including financial reasons. You hear some people talk about the fact that the Boko Haram, the situation that's happening in the Northeast, for some people is birthed from the fact that they feel like they are marginalized, there are no opportunities for them. Therefore, they found a group of people that they can relate with and that they can be able to generate some money from, right? So the point I'm trying to just make is that it's not something that can be looked at alone. You have to look at it in the broader sense of the other weaknesses and the other areas where the Nigerian government needs to do better for you to be able to have any sort of amnesty or de-radicalization program that actually works and is sustainable. If not, you are spending funds, because running those kinds of programs are not cheap. There's a whole conversation right now around the NDDC and what happened in Niger Delta and the amounts of funds that have vanished. And if people hear that, it makes people become a bit disillusioned, because you're like, okay, this was a program that was set up to be able to fix a conflict that was happening in our country by de-radicalizing the people that are causing this conflict. Then you hear a few people have taken this money and used it for other things. You can imagine the kind of perception that people get. Yeah.
All right. Now, how important is the role, and this is the last question that we're asking you, so you find a way to round up. How important is the role of civil society organizations and NGOs in these processes of rebuilding and restoring communities that have been devastated by, attacks of bandits and, Boko Haram and all that?
Yeah. Civil society organizations, very similarly to the media, are a voice for the people. So they engage directly with the people and understand the people's concerns. I'll use the instance of my organization. We work with local communities in the Northeast in building resilience, in understanding their security challenges, and then helping them dialogue to be able to profess solutions to those challenges. So civil society organizations are able to engage directly with the people and understand the different contexts. They also have the knowledge around mechanisms and structures to be able to sustain peace, to be done in a democratic way, to be done in a way that is inclusive, and to be done in a way that brings all parties together, including the government. Sometimes government approaches to things can be very one-sided, right? Because they are looking at national interest and national security. So if you're looking at an issue that broadly, it's a bit difficult sometimes to hone in on the specific challenges. And that's the role of civil society. We're able to understand the context in the different regions, understand why peace building in the Northeast is different from peace building in the Southwest.
Understand what's happening in the Southeast. There's a follow-up to that, which is that how much of partnership have we seen between the government and all of these, civil society organizations and NGOs? Because you have said that they have the information, they have the knowledge of the dynamics, at the grassroots level. So I think that there should be some kind of partnership. And how much of it have we enjoyed? I
think there's partnership to a certain level, but however, I would say that the civic space in Nigeria is shrinking, meaning that the Nigerian government is not necessarily too open to engaging with civil society and too open to receiving that kind of constructive criticism. That's a whole other conversation, but you see how there's a clampdown on the media, there's a clampdown on civil society organizations releasing certain information. There's a lot of mistrust between those groups. So yes, partnership is important, and there have been partnerships, and my organization is one of the organizations that has been able to engage with the government constructively in different regions of the country, but I think it can be better. I think if the different perspectives are brought into play, like I said, the government looks at it from a certain dimension, which is national security. So the entire country is important to them. But then civil society organizations also need to be engaged with to ensure that we're not missing out the lower level issues in a bid or in an attempt to address the larger problem.
All right then. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. We are really glad to have you in the studio. We've been speaking with TOLU OJESHINA, the Program Manager, Citizen Security, and she has been, telling us and sharing with us some of her experiences as far as, peace building is concerned. Don't forget, today is International Day for Peace, and which is why we're having all of these conversations. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you so much.